Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I hope you're able to join me either live or on replay. And if you're watching on replay, put replay in the comments and leave a comment about what we're talking about today if it's something that resonates with you. And I want to welcome primarily senior women leaders who are either in or on the brink of burnout. You are pulled in a million different directions, managing your high pressure career, managing your family, and everything in between. Maybe you're on a board, maybe you're, working with a nonprofit organization as well. Burnout isn't a personal failure, which I think some people feel like it is. It is a signal that something has to change. And so today we are going to dive into a topic that is so relevant to helping you cure burnout. And it is boundaries. We're going to talk about what they are, why they're critical for your success, your well-being, your relationships, and how to set them without feeling guilty or having it come across as being manipulative. So let's first just talk about what are boundaries. A boundary is like a property line. And so just like the property line of your house, or even the perimeter of your actual physical dwelling, which we'll talk about a little bit later, those are property. You have a property line around your house. And if someone crosses it and someone's wandering around in your yard, walking their dog in your yard and letting it crap on your yard, they have crossed a boundary. We have similar physical boundaries at work, but we also have emotional boundaries. And it's a little bit, we'll talk about it in more detail, but it really is something that you create for yourself. Healthy boundaries really promote self-responsibility. They promote empowerment. They actually lead to closer relationships with other people. So let's debunk a few myths about boundaries, because oftentimes we think that they isolate us. They really don't. They create stronger, healthier connections, and they foster clarity and respect. So, what are some of the myths? The first is that setting boundaries are going to damage relationships. The belief is, so I'm going to talk about the belief and the truth for a few different myths. The first one is, if I set boundaries, people will think I'm selfish or uncaring, and it will actually harm my relationships. Boundaries actually strengthen relationships because they create, as I said earlier, clarity and mutual respect. When you set a boundary, you're actually teaching others, you're coaching, mentoring others how to interact with you in a way that honors you, honors your needs and theirs. Because this can reduce any kind of miscommunication, resentment, conflict, and it paves the way for really more authentic connection. Because when you're making the connection, you're able to be present. You're able to be in a space that can actually offer a deeper connection. The second myth is that if I admit that I need a boundary, people will think I can't handle the pressure or I'm not cut out for leadership. And the truth is that leaders who set boundaries demonstrate self-awareness, they demonstrate emotional intelligence, and they demonstrate strength. Boundaries are not a sign of weakness. They are actually a mark of strategic leadership. I think it was Melissa Mayer, the former CEO of, I have it in another deck, former CEO of Yahoo said, I've said no to a lot of powerful people. And she talked about how important it was to set boundaries. By prioritizing what matters most to you, what matters most in your role, in your life, it shows others that you value and focus on quality and on your well-being over exhaustion and overextension. And this can build credibility and respect. And then the third myth is the belief that I shouldn't need boundaries. Successful leaders should just be able to juggle it all. And the belief that you have to handle everything without limits is a fast track to burnout. It just is. And it kind of goes to what Mark Evans in his book, Mule versus Magician, talks about in terms of getting paid for doing everything. So the mule gets paid for every load it carries. If it carries 50 loads, it gets paid, whatever the amount is per load for 50 loads. Whereas the magician in this fable really is about delegation and influence and strategy. And so leadership isn't about doing it all. It's about guiding others. It's about mentoring others. It's about delegating, conserving your energy for strategic thinking, saving your time, conserving your time, protecting your time so that you have time to work on the strategic kinds of projects and the strategy that makes you the leader that you are. Setting boundaries actually enables you to lead with quality and clarity and purpose. And it actually helps you avoid becoming overwhelmed and helps you maintain sustainability in your role. Because when you're trying to do it all, then the strategic decisions get less and less and less and less time, and they become less strategic. We're not meant to do deep thinking and strategy in micro doses. Our brain needs that time. It needs a chunk of time to actually get creative and get strategic and to expand. I had a client, Laura, who we'll talk about, someone who was setting setting boundaries. When she began to set boundaries, so let me just give a little bit background on her. She worked for a major firm that had it was a retailer and had she was in charge of multiple locations across multiple states. And she was on call once a month. Only she took on calls every weekend, every night. So she was never really not on call. She volunteered for every project, thinking she had to prove herself and prove that she could handle multiple projects at once. And when she began setting boundaries, it actually had zero impact on her productivity. It increased her leadership's respect for her peers' respect for her, and actually created space and time for her to be more present with her teams and with her family. So why do boundaries matter? There's kind of a few different categories. The first one is well-being. The second one is success. The third one is advancement. And the fourth one is health and relationships. So boundaries matter. You need to create really healthy and well thought out boundaries to protect your mental well-being and your physical well-being. So without boundaries, you are more likely to experience chronic stress, anxiety, and burnout. When you're able to set limits on your time, on your space, on your availability, you give yourself permission to step back and recharge and maintain your emotional stability. Now, part of that is giving your brain time to shut off, and not shut off by, just binge watching Netflix. It's called active rest. And when you go into a point of active rest, let's say doing a puzzle, doing a crossword, reading a book that's maybe not even professional, but just, doing something that engages your brain but doesn't involve doing the work that you normally do. This actually can lead to 20% increase in productivity the next day if you do this in the evenings. And it can also lead to more creative problem solving, because you're giving your brain a break on what it's solving, and it kind of puts it on the back burner. It gives your brain time to process and to give your subconscious time to really think about it. And then when you actually put your brain to work on it, it's got more ideas for you to choose from. Constantly saying yes to others at the expense of yourself can also lead to physical symptoms: fatigue, insomnia, chronic illness, chronic pain, digestive distress. And boundaries create breathing room that your body needs to recover and thrive. If you're not getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep, adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep to actually regenerate cells that are healthy. Your body's cells repair and then reproduce. They duplicate. And if they don't go through the cycle of repair, if that gets short-circuited by not enough sleep, then they're actually duplicating cells that are damaged. And you just have more damaged cells, inflammation, chronic illness, chronic pain. Dr. Gabor Mate says that the chronic and the automatic and compulsive need to take care of the needs of others while ignoring our own is a major risk factor for chronic illness. All right, let's talk a little bit about why boundaries matter to your success. When you lack boundaries, you can actually become very overwhelmed by everyone else's demands. Boundaries protect your time, they protect your energy, and they actually allow you the time and the space and the energy to focus on the high value activities where you can have the most value, the most influence that aligns with your goals, your team's goals, your organization's goals. You don't want to get into the space of overcommitting. Boundaries help you say no when necessary. You can't, when you allow yourself to become so stretched thin, you're giving the weakest to everything. You're not giving your best. You're not able to sustain your career at the quality. Your quality and creativity will suffer. And the other thing is that setting limits, the long-term sustainability, setting limits is key to maintaining your stamina, your energy that you need for sustained success over the course of your career. I think we feel like we can just run at Mach 4 with our hair on fire, in the first part of our career and think we can continue that all the way through. And part of it is that we're doing so much damage at the beginning, we don't realize the impact it has later in our career. So let's talk about a few other things, 3 more things of why boundaries matter. They will strengthen your leadership. When you model the behavior of being able to set healthy boundaries, this creates a model for your employees to do the same. This gives them the space and the time and the energy to be creative, to be strategic, to provide more productive and creative solutions. You earn the respect of both your team and your colleagues. By setting those clear boundaries with confidence and authority, you earn that respect from all of those people in your organization as well as with your family. Effective delegation is also another way in setting boundaries, is you're trusting, you're creating an extremely deep level of trust with those people you're delegating to and allowing them to fail and grow, fail and grow, fail and grow. Because that's how we grow, is through failure. And if you let others take ownership while you focus on strategy, you're really empowering your team to be more effective employees, to be more effective leaders. Now, the other thing that boundaries help with are to safeguard your relationships. With boundaries, you might feel overused, undervalued, and it actually leads to a great deal of resentment. And resentment is one of those emotions that sometimes just festers beneath the surface and then can blow up at sometimes the smallest things. And when we're setting healthy boundaries, we build mutual respect. Boundaries teach others how to treat you. They help create clarity. They help people understand you as your true self without resentment, without hidden frustrations, without having to stuff down, God, I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish I didn't have to do X. I wish I didn't have to do Y. Those hidden frustrations and resentments actually will dampen down, will minimize and hurt your immune system. And so when you set boundaries, you can actually show up better as your true self. And you don't have all that hidden resentment and hidden frustration. You're able to be more authentic with people and create even deeper, better connections. And the other thing that boundaries do is to actually help with your own personal growth, because you stop wasting energy on things that drain you. When you're doing things, I talk about this in my webinars that I do every Tuesday, when you get reconnected with who you are at your core, what you need on a moment by moment, day by day, week by week, month by month basis. What are my preferences? What are my needs? I was just talking with my brother. He and I both are the kind of people who, if we don't work out first thing in the morning, probably not going to happen. And so I set a boundary where, and this is more a personal boundary, where I make sure that I'm in bed and I've got some quiet time before that so that I can get good quality sleep and be up early enough to get my workout in the morning. And, that means negotiating a boundary with my husband about, not watching violent, loud action films at, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And this can happen in the workplace as well. But you can stop wasting your energy on all those things that drain you. You can free up so much mental and emotional resources when you drop some of those things that are draining you, because then you wouldn't believe the kind of energy you have to actually do the things that you want to do and that you're so good at. Also, reflecting on the boundaries that you want to create and that you need to address your personal needs, your preferences, your gifts, your talents, you actually start to gain some insight into what really matters to you. And that encourages self-discovery. And self-discovery is so powerful. And it's something that you can use in your coaching and mentoring of the people on your team. So ultimately, boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping what matters most to you in and close to you. Your time, your energy, what you value, your gifts, your talents, all of that. And they actually create a foundation so that you can have sustainable success over time, that you're not just powering through until retirement. So next, we're going to dive deep into how to fix and spot ineffective boundaries and how to set guilt-free boundaries. So let's talk through this and then we'll wrap it up. So the first thing is anything, when we have a boundary, if a boundary seems like it's about people pleasing, then it is not a boundary. Or if a boundary is passive aggressive behavior, where when you do something, I'm going to get passively aggressive. I'm going to ignore you. I won't talk to you. I will, do other passive aggressive behaviors. So an example of that might be if you're always saying yes and feeling bitter afterward, it's a red flag. So if you are resentful when you say yes to things because you really feel like I didn't want to do that, I shouldn't have to do that, whatever it might be. So in order to set effective boundaries, we really need to know our limits. We need to know who we are at the core of our being. Again, our gifts, our talents, our needs, our wants, our desires, our preferences. And sometimes we've been operating in somebody else's expectations for so long that we don't know who that is. We have lost touch with that core self of ours. And so trying to get back in touch with that self-discovery is part of what I do with my clients. And it allows you to know, where is my core and what's beyond that? What are my limits? And what then, if I know what my limits are, then I know when somebody's crossing those limits. So we think about setting guilt-free boundaries. It isn't selfish. It is really necessary. Feeling guilty about something that is necessary for you to be your best self, that's not being selfish. Setting a boundary helps you to be your best self to everyone, to yourself, to your team, to your leadership, to your family, to everyone you love, to your friends. It really allows you to create that space for you to be your best. Now, how do we set guilt-free boundaries? So first is to get into that mental space of, this is for me, and it's for my relationships with everyone. It's for me to be the best leader that I want to be. And there's really two pieces to a boundary. The first is the request, asking someone to stop doing something that infringes on your property limits, whether those are literal or emotional. And then the consequence. which is telling the person what you will do if they don't comply with the request. Now, people are people. We cannot control others. All we can control is ourselves. So it's what are we going to do? So for an example, a script might sound like this, and I'm going to use just kind of parens for the behavior. I'll just kind of frame it out first. When you blank, I feel, what's the impact? So when you, and name a specific behavior, I feel, and you don't always have to add that in, but sometimes it's helpful. But it's not you make me feel by doing X. It's you do this, I feel this, which we'll talk about. I've talked about before, and we can talk about again some other time. That is really about your thoughts. You feel things because of your thoughts about that behavior. But I need you to new behavior. If not, I will consequence. So an example of that might be if you continue emailing me after hours, I'm not going to respond until the next business day. And you might even say, if you continue to email me every night and all weekend long, I won't respond. I am going to wait until the next business day to respond to you. And boundaries really should come from valuing the relationship in yourself. Again, when we work in every evening, or when we're working evenings so much that our brain never gets that active rest, we are 20% less productive the next day. 20%. So the risks, the biggest risk, we've kind of talked about this already in terms of why set boundaries. But as Dr. Gabor Mate said, is when we have this compulsive and automatic need to care for the needs of others, which is what not setting a boundary does. It's making what everybody else needs more important than what we need. It will lead to, and we ignore our own needs. It leads to chronic stress, chronic health issues, disease, all sorts of autoimmune disorders. It also erodes your relationship, and it actually stunts your career growth. You're not creating that space to be the strategic leader that your organization needs. You actually trade short-term comfort. I'm not going to set a boundary because it's uncomfortable. You're trading that short-term comfort for long-term harm. So boundaries are really essential for your well-being, for your success, for all of your relationships, both professionally and personally. And if you're ready to stop burnout in its tracks, stop it from the inside out, not from just applying a bazillion different self-care, tricks and tips. Those can be helpful, but used alone, they don't stop burnout for good. I just spoke to a woman recently who has multiple times already quit her job and taken 6 months off to recover from burnout. Multiple times in her career. That isn't necessary. We can end burnout. We can learn how to watch the signals, be connected to what we need, and create the boundaries to give ourselves the space to learn, to grow, to be strategic, to know, to assess and delegate in a mindful way. But if you're ready to stop burnout in its tracks, please book a burnout breakthrough call, and confidential, free. Please set it up. It's 45 minutes, and we'll talk about your personal situation. We'll talk about what your vision looks like for a life without burnout, and we'll talk about how I might be able to help you. I'd be so happy to chat with you. Again, look in the comments or DM me on whatever platform you're watching this on, and let's have a chat. Thanks, and have a great rest of your week.